One of the things about guitar collecting is you have to enter into it knowing that one day, if you buy something, it could be worth 10 times what you paid. And also, conversely, knowing that something that you buy could zero out. Literally has no value. Ask me, if I'm in the Mojave Desert, okay, stranded, and I got nothing but a Princeton reverb, and some guy comes up and says, "Hey, and he has a bottle of water," and I go, "Hey, I'll trade you my Princeton reverb for that bottle of Fiji water." You go, "No way. Your Princeton reverb has zero value in that situation." If you enjoy it, if you love it, if you look at it, like in my case, I choose to surround myself with it, and I live in it. People come up to my house and they go, is it just overwhelming when you, not really. A, I designed it all. You're not going to hire an interior designer to do this. I put all these here. And B, I live in it, so I'm surrounded by it. And that's the thing about collecting is if you just if you throw a whole bunch of money at the guitar, collecting business, hoping that, looking at them as if you own stock in Apple or GE, and then a year from now you go, well, how's my portfolio doing? You're better off doing it with stocks than it is guitars, because if you don't love them, then why are you even bothering with it? Because to me it dehumanizes the relationship between you and the instrument. And what we are is we're custodians for a next generation and a generation after that will hopefully love and cherish these guitars. And it's a throwback to when this country made everything, every screw and speaker and transformer and pickup was all made here in the United States. And they would buy stuff from, Fender would I have early Fender amps that the transformers were made in a shop in LA that did radios, and there was a sticker on it. So Leo would buy the transformer from this place and stick it in his amp and then sell it and then the amp makes its way to Toledo, Ohio, but everything was made here, and that's it's part of Americana. You're dealing in Americana and nostalgia, and you're dealing in preserving things for history. Well, one of the things that I kind of chuckle is the stuff I've been around my whole life, like a blackface Princeton reverb. I use that as an example all the time because I'll see a blackface Princeton reverb priced at $34.95, and I laugh because I sound like an old man when I say this. I'm going, to me, I can't disassociate the fact that the first one I ever bought, now I have 6 or 7 of these things, I've paid more, cost me $350. Same thing with the deluxe reverb. My deluxe reverb cost me $450. My first Maple Neck Strat cost me $4,000, which was all the money in the world. All the money in the world. So when I see $40,000 or $80,000, you're like, whoa, it's a different time. But you also, as a collector, you also want to be really hip to where the marketplace is, because you can get upside down real quick, and you don't want to be upside down. It'd be nice to break even, get out with your dignity, as I like to say. To me, I'm a solid body collector. I collect solid body Fender and Gibson from the years 1950 to about 1965. So you're talking all the Ted McCarty era Gibsons, Firebirds, Les Pauls, Flying V's, Sunburst Les Pauls as well. And Leo's stuff that he made from 1950 to about 1965 when he left the company. And I have stuff that's a little bit later, but generally that 15-year period is where is my area of interest. So we look at vintage guitars as guitars from that era. But think about a guitar from 1980. A guitar that was made in 1980, which 10 years ago, that's not a vintage guitar. 20 years ago, it's certainly not a vintage guitar. It's now 40 years old. And you go, Well, I started collecting this stuff when the guitars that I love that are quote-unquote vintage weren't 40 years old. And it is a real... It's by definition, vintage is 25 years and older, okay? So if you have classic car insurance, you know anything about classic car insurance, if you have a car that's 30 years old or 40 years old, you get classic car insurance. Well, that means your 1980 Chevy Vega is now a classic car. Is it in the same category as a 1965 Shelby GT350? No. But it is still, by definition, a classic car. So the thing about vintage guitars and what makes them vintage is whatever era of guitar collecting, like some people I know that love 70s stuff. Some people collect 80s Charvels and Jacksons and stuff from that era. Why are they doing that? They're going back because that's the music they listened to as children. They grew up on Van Halen. They grew up on all that stuff, Alan Holdsworth, and that's a whole different tranche of collecting. Because they're going back and buying the stuff they either had as a kid or longed after in photos in Guitar World magazine. Conversely, I saw Eric Clapton play, a Sunburst Strat, or looked at a cover of a record and go, I want that. It turns out to be in 1956. You saw Jimmy Page and the song remains the same. He's got a Sunburst Les Paul. It turns out to be 1959. So, in a sense, I'm buying my nostalgia based on my guitar heroes and what I grew up listening to. So that's really, by definition, what collecting and collectibles are, is people going back and, by definition, repurchasing their childhood. And you see it generation after generation after generation. When people start getting into their 30s, their lifestyle, they have a little money, tucked away for a rainy day, their kids are okay, and the lights are on. They'll go, I've always wanted to get my 1968 Corvair back. So they'll go buy a Corvair, or they want, I used to have a 72 Strat or a guitar from my birth year, and they go buy that. And that's why they focus in on that particular year and that particular era. They don't go, well, I just want anything that happens to be vintage. And that's one of the prevailing narratives that I don't understand. Sometimes people offer me stuff like, will you buy any vintage guitar you see? I go, no, I stick to a very specific thing. And I very rarely vary that very specific thing, because it's what I love. And if I'm going to get stuck with it, I'd rather be stuck with stuff that I love.